Welcome to The Craft. I'm your host, May Globus. This podcast is a collection of intimate conversations on artistry, mastery, and life with talented, passionately curious creatives and entrepreneurs. Most are dear friends, some are those I've admired from afar. I hope you enjoy these conversations, this exploration of the humanity that connects all of us, as much as I do having them. Thank you for being here and for listening. This episode is brought to you by Before, an incredible new self-care brand that just launched their first products, a line of purifying toothpastes. I'm obsessive about my teeth and brush them usually 3 times a day, so I'm super excited to be using Before. It ticks off many boxes of what a good toothpaste should be. Their custom supermint flavor actually tastes really good, and the consistency is silky, and at the same time, it doesn't leak out of the tube, which is a total pet peeve of mine. It's also non-abrasive, so it doesn't destroy your tooth enamel. All the harmful ingredients have been replaced by clean alternatives, and their custom blend of fluoride and dentist-approved ingredients totally promotes optimal mouth health. Before also deeply cares about our planet. Their tubes are made from 100% recyclable plant-based sugarcane and creates 50% less carbon footprint than traditional toothpaste tubes. As you all can tell from the show, I'm a huge fan of good, purposeful design, and let me tell you, the design and color palette of these are beautiful. The tube stands upright on your counter and makes your bathroom look minimal and chic. Visit their website, before.com, and enter the code CRAFT10, CRAFT10, to receive 10% off your entire purchase. One-time use per customer. I'm a huge fan of what they stand for. You won't be sorry, and your teeth and the planet will thank you. As a number of you know, I'm also a certified sound therapy practitioner and founder of Oto Healing, a sound therapy studio and practice. Sound has been a healing modality through many cultures for thousands of years. Oto's approach to sound is rooted in both art and science, the art being the history of sound, the science being quantum physics, biology, brainwave states, and more. All listeners of the show get 15% off their first private 1-hour session. Visit otohealing.com to book yours now. Sara Gulamali is bright and brilliant, not only as a person, but also as an award-winning young artist. For years, she's created her own works, has hosted creative events through the Tate Exchange Programme, and is now part of supporting artists as Associate Director at Howard495, a global art advisory firm and gallery, serving new and dedicated collectors in both the private and commercial spaces. As a British-Pakistani, she's proud of her Muslim heritage, and in 2017, with 2 close friends, founded Muslim Sisterhood, a collective and creative agency working across campaign production, research, consultancy, and community-focused initiatives with clients such as Nike, Crocs, Disney, the NHS, and more. Their aim is to spotlight, unite, and uplift Muslim women across the world, and they've been featured in British Vogue, DAZED, and Marie Claire Arabia. Born and raised in London, she came from a close-knit family and had a wonderful bond with her late grandmother, who taught Sara the basis of the Muslim faith. She was also very close with her mother, who was diagnosed with cancer in 2011-2012 and passed 2 months later. Creativity was intrinsic to Sara as a young person, and she was always practicing art in various methods. After high school, she attended Kingston University for a foundation degree, followed by Central St. Martin's for a Bachelor of Fine Arts. She also co-curated the first student show at the Letheby Gallery within the university. In 2019, she located to Vancouver from London to be with her now husband, and eventually connected to Krista Howard, founder of Howard495. In this conversation, we go deep into life circumstances that forced her to grow up quickly, what faith looks like to Sara, the role art plays in her life, how art university experiences and friendships taught her to question the nature of things, the genesis story of Muslim Sisterhood, navigating culture shock moving from London to Vancouver, how she navigates spaces as a Muslim woman, and much more. Please enjoy this conversation with the hyper-intelligent, warm, and luminous Sara Gulamali. Sara Gulamali.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You have such a soft voice, May. It's so calming already off the bat. You're like, how are you? I love it. It's a good listen.
Except when I get really excited. Then the
Oh yeah, that's
decibels
me as
rise
well.
and it gets really, really high.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, you and I met through my friend Smokey,
Mm-hmm.
and he had told me you need to go to this gallery on Commercial Street, Howard495. And he was like, you would just love the women who work there. And so I came with him and I got to meet you and Krista, who's going to be on the show
Mm-hmm.
in a number of weeks. And I just loved and love still your energy. It's very
Thank you.
warm and welcoming, which is not always the case when you walk into a gallery.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think we try and put down that like pretentious kind of environment that galleries often have. You know, we don't want people to feel scared to come in, and we want people to be able to come and enjoy the work that we do and like partake in discussions. That's really important to us. So yeah, we just appreciated that you were so open to like having discussions and talking with us.
Oh my gosh, you know me. Now you know me. I love getting deep.
Yeah, honestly, no, it's really refreshing to have that, because I feel like
Mm,
not many people are that honest and open off the bat.
mm. I mean, this is what we need to do as humans. Why not?
For
Let's
sure.
share. But speaking of sharing, let's go back into your childhood. You were born in London.
Yes. So I was born in London. I lived in Ealing like my whole life, pretty much up until 2018. Um, yeah. What do you want to know? You tell me.
I just want to hear the story
Oh my gosh.
of what it was like growing up in London, British-Pakistani, and what your parents were like, what
Oh
your
my gosh. So yeah, I loved living in London. It really was like kind of all I knew. Um, Growing up, I had a really close relationships with my family, especially my grandmother. I was super close with her. She kind of really taught us the basis of, I'm Muslim, obviously. So she really taught us the basis of kind of my faith. And growing up, I was just very close with all my cousins and my uncles. So yeah, it was really fun to grow up with such a close knit family over
Mm.
there. I lived with my mom, my dad, and my younger brother, who was special needs. And so growing up, it was like we had a lot of exciting stories with my brother just kind of running around, causing havoc, and me just following along. And yeah, it was a fun time.
Hmm. Tell me about your parents.
So my mum was kind of a stay-at-home mum. She worked for a little bit, but that's really how I remember her. She was very much stay-at-home. You know, she was kind of my primary caregiver. She really did everything. I really attest a lot of my kind of outlook on life um, to the way she used to be very open with me and explain to me things. She was very strict, don't get me wrong. I was always like so scared. I would never step a foot out of line because like I was just very yeah, I never wanted to like disappoint people, and but I still had a really really close relationship with my mom. And my dad was very much like a workaholic, so he wasn't really home as much. He wasn't so much of a caregiver, but yeah, it was super super close to my mom. And then um you know, in about 2011, 2012, she was diagnosed with cancer. So pretty early on, you know, she got diagnosed with acute lymphoma and ended up passing away like 2 months after her diagnosis. So honestly, I had to grow up pretty quickly because of that, trying to figure out. I had my older sister who was living abroad at the time. She helped as much as she could from where she was, but yeah, it was really different. I had to grow up a lot faster than I think most of my kind of peers.
Mm, hmm. Did you feel a point, at this time where you had sort of just a loss of innocence because you had to grow up so quickly?
I mean, it's strange. I feel like as you get older, your perception gets skewed. So maybe I felt different at the time, but you know, I had a great group of friends. I had a really solid foundation. I went to an all girls school, so I was constantly surrounded by like strong like female, like I had like a lot of like I had always had girl groups, and they all had mums. And so even though my mum wasn't around, I really had a great support system of mums who really tried to take on that role in a different way. Of course, no one can ever replace your mum, but I felt that um I had lots of people who I could lean on, and my friends at the time really became kind of like family. I obviously, you see them at school every day. They were the people who I saw the most throughout everything that I was going through. And so I don't know. I think upon reflection, I probably did have a loss of innocence, but at the time I was still enjoying myself. Like I was still maintaining as much as I could as like a happy teenager because I had that support system around me.
Yeah, you were still surrounded by love.
Yeah, 100%. Like I hear sometimes people talk about their high school experience, and a lot of people face things like bullying or had a really negative experience, but I had just like only positive things to say. Like I used to make jokes like, oh my God, I peaked in high school. Like that was the best years of my life. Like just being, because I was with it for a while, but I really wanted to maintain like faith and keep that something in my life because I felt like that was something they wanted for me. And so to keep them kind of close to me, I kept that within me.
What does faith look like to you?
Well, obviously, as I mentioned, I'm Muslim. So there's kind of the intrinsic elements of what it means to be a Muslim that come with having faith, but also at the same time, I think there was a lot of spirituality. I was really always interested in trying to understand why we as Muslims do certain things that we do and why we practice certain practices, and really be able to understand my religion in a way that if I was to have a discussion with someone about it, I didn't feel like I was following blindly. Like I truly understood what I was believing and understood why I do it and why it's important. So I really, and I used to ask my mom tons of questions. I used to be like, I used to always question why we were what we were and why we did what we did. And, I was born Muslim, so I'm Muslim. But, if I was born in another family, I would be this. So like, how do we know what we're doing is right? And we would always have these kind of theological discussions. And she was never afraid of like answering those. And I appreciate that because I know some parents or some like families of faith, they don't want you to question too much. They're just kind of like, this is the way it is. Whereas I think my family were very open to wanting to understand. And they're saying you should understand and then make your own decision at the end of the day. And it'll make you stronger in that faith.
There's an openness, such an openness to that.
Yeah, for sure. Because I feel like, as you get older, especially when you're Muslim, there's so many practices that kind of go maybe against what typical, teenagers or life is expected. You go to university, drinking culture is huge. Muslims don't drink alcohol. So the fact that, you're going to be tested in ways that, you would never expect. So if you're not strong in your faith or you don't understand why you are not allowed to do certain things or why you shouldn't be doing certain things, you're gonna fall into it, right? So I think for me to really understand the basis of my faith helps me kind of come to terms of it when I face those challenges.
And I imagine having that faith allows you to come back to something rooted and grounded when things may feel hectic.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And chaotic.
Oh, 100%. Like a lot, I think I was able to come to peace with my mom's passing as well, because I just felt like this world tested her in so many difficult ways. And being Muslim, I believe a lot in the afterlife. I'm like, wow, they must have seen so much in their lifetime that they just don't even express, or like no one's ever asked them.
They just pushed that down because they needed to keep on going.
For sure.
What role did art play in your life when you were younger?
I was always pretty much, I was always a creative child. I was always into doing something creative, drawing, sculpting, painting. So it really was, I don't know if it was like an outlet, or I just genuinely enjoyed it. So, and a lot of my aunts and my mum was very creative. I'd always see her drawing on kind of notepads. And so I think it was always kind of intrinsic to who I was. And then when I was in high school, my mum really encouraged that. She sent me to, art tutors and art classes. And I was always kind of practicing and building on that skill. And then when I was in high school, I had an art teacher who was really influential for me. She really taught me a lot. And I remember I was having a bit of like an epiphany because by this point my mum had passed away and it was just my dad. And just as we discussed previously, that whole kind of intrinsic survival of the fittest was his outlook. And so he was pushing me to go do law because I had kind of the qualifications to do either, basically. I had done like English and philosophy, so I could have gone into a law, and he was really pushing me to do that. And I went into the art room and I was like, that's it. Like, I'm applying for a law degree. Like, there's no, like, I can't do art. It's too risky. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I had no idea. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be a famous artist, but I had no idea what I was going to do. And my art teacher just looked at me and she was like, but what? Like, that's so not honest. Like, that's not what you want to do. So, you know, stop, you know, things work out. You don't realize how big the world is and how many opportunities they are. So stop pushing yourself into something, into a box that you don't want to be in. And I'm so glad I made that decision. Then I listened to her and then I applied for art, and it was like the best decision I ever made.
Oh, I love that she said that to you about that's not your truth.
Yeah, for sure. No, it made, like, I needed someone else to hear that because I needed that other perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was looking for a reason as well. I think I was
like, someone tell me.
Yeah, I know. I was like, please. Yeah, I was 100% waiting for someone to just give me an excuse.
Yeah, you could go back to that and you're like, but my teacher said.
Yeah, I knew, like, my sister had studied fine art as well, and she had gone into a really successful graphic design career, and I had seen her be really successful. So I knew it was possible. I didn't have I wasn't very good at graphic design. I knew that wasn't going to be a career for me, but I knew that people could study art and still be successful. I had seen that in my close circle. So I was just looking for an excuse. I think I was just getting cold feet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just need a little warming up.
Yeah.
A little fire.
For sure. I feel like people make it seem when you're applying for uni that, like, you're signing up for the rest of your life, and you feel that, especially when you're in high school, it just feels like everything you're doing, especially, I don't know about here actually, but in the UK, there's like the education system really just pushes you to feel like everything's really final and really important and really, really crucial to your future. Like, you know, we had this thing called DAZED, which is called the Duke of Edinburgh. And it's like a program that a lot of schools run. And it teaches you like different skills and you know, you do camping and you do hiking and you do like all these different
home ec.
Yeah, kind of. And you do all this kind of stuff. And I remember I didn't want to do DAV. And oh my God, my school made me feel like I was never going to achieve anything because I didn't do this. And I felt that way. I felt so bad about it. And so, yeah, I just feel like school really pushed us to feel like every decision we made was going to be so influential to our life and so crucial. And then when I got to uni, I was like, wow, some people like don't even turn up to class and they're still going to get a degree. Like, it's so different.
Oh my God. I'm just listening to you now and I'm just like, what is with these fear-based systems?
Yeah.
Like, it's time to go.
Yeah, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even still, like, I really appreciated my education. I felt like I was really lucky and privileged with the type of education I got. I had access to such great opportunities that when I speak to kind of my husband and, you know, kind of his family of what they do in school, like I had a lot of learning lessons that I don't feel like every school gets. So I was really lucky in that regard. But yeah, it was like really rigorous education.
I'm just going to go through some chronological things so that people understand your history. So you went to Kingston University for a foundation degree.
Yeah.
And then to Central St. Martin's for your BFA. And this led to a lot of great opportunities for you. You co-curated the first student show at the Lethaby Gallery, which is within the university. And then you also did a Tate Exchange Programme for 3 years in a row. Tell me about this time. And this sounds like a very expansive time for a young person who is an artist.
Yeah, uni was so, like, looking back, it was so much fun. When I first started, I was really worried. So when I was at Kingston, I did not enjoy myself, especially being like a visibly Muslim woman, like in general being a woman of faith in uni. Like, I felt like it was very rare, especially in arts uni specifically. Like I've noticed in other there's more of a Muslim community, but being in an arts degree, it's kind of, you don't see many Muslims, practicing Muslims in that environment, at least where I was. So at Kingston, I was really like, oh my God, how am I going to survive this? Because, you know, I was the only one who didn't drink. Everyone wanted to go to the pub after. I wasn't really comfortable with that. I had like barely any friends, and I really was struggling to navigate. being Muslim in uni, and I was so attached to my high school friends because I had such a diverse group of high school friends. So and my foundation was like majority white classmates. So I really felt like, oh, like, you know, where's all the people of color? Where's the kind of discussions? And I didn't feel as comfortable and open as I felt in high school. So it was a real culture shock for me. And then going into CSM, once I did my BA, my first year, I was really lucky because I saw another hijabi girl who was Maria Mahfouz, who is still my longtime friend. And we saw each other, and something really funny happened because one of the tutors mixed us up, which is so like typical.
Yes, so typical.
Yeah, of course. Like, okay, we all look the same. So yeah, he mixed us up, and then we kind of looked at each other with this kind of knowing look of like, oh, you know, they all think we're the same. Ha. And then we just like immediately clicked and became really good friends. And then obviously our good friend Hugo Hutchins, another shout out, great artist. Those two still have a studio back in the UK, and they do a lot of work together. But we kind of became a trio. And that just really transformed my university experience, I think, having two really good friends and having a stable group again. Because I love me a group. I love me a stable group.
Yeah, you need your friend family.
Exactly, yeah. So that they were just like my friend family, and we just like learned a lot from each other, and we went through this whole experience together. So that's what really made my university experience.
And it must be so nice to be able to have artistic dialogue with people that you trust.
100%. And that was really different because that was the one thing that my high school friends could never give me, because, you know, I became really like, you know, analyzing and, you know, university does that to you. And I feel like we were having always so many art discussions that my high school friends could never relate to or like partake in. So it was really good to have that outlet and to have people who are, always interested in questioning the nature of things, and and just go to galleries with, go to exhibitions with. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's great. And so you did some freelance content producing for Nike and Converse, but the biggest thing that happened was you co-founded Muslim Sisterhood.
Yeah.
Yes.
So all of that Nike stuff actually was within Muslim Sisterhood. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think around as I mentioned, still, even though I had Maria, we were the only really two Muslim girls in our kind of class. And I know that for some people, that's like, that in itself is still really good. But, you know, London is a huge Muslim population. And I was, again, really diverse city. So the fact that we were the only two and that there were barely any people of color in our course still did not feel as diverse as it could be compared to what was really out there in the city. So I just felt it was really difficult for me to make work that was really honest about myself in a school and a system that really didn't understand me. You know, even when I was in the beginning, when I would make art just for the sake of being an artist and exploring, I was really into like form and material and sculpture, and I'd make all these things, and people would always try and tie it back to my identity and say, you know, like, oh, is this to do with your faith, or is it to do with your religion? And I would kind of roll my eyes and think, no, I'm more than just kind of the visible Muslim that you see on the outside. Like I can be an artist and not have to be a Muslim artist. So I was really trying to reject that. And then I think when those questions started coming up, I started incorporating that within my work and embracing that a little bit. But then I just felt the conversations that I was having in my crits were really stunted because people just didn't understand where I was coming from, or the kind of topics or struggles I was discussing within my work. And so there was like a sense of frustration there. And then I met Zainab, who was also studying fine art, but she was at UCL, and that's University College of London. And she was studying at the Slade, which was an arts uni. And she had curated her own exhibition of a bunch of Somali artists. And it was like the first time I had seen like a group of like women of color, Muslim women, all making work authentically about their identity and it all being in one space. And I was just so excited by it and amazed that she was able to pull something like this off independently outside of the institution, because everything I had known was just doing stuff within the college or within the resources that you were given. And so to see her self-organize and to put something together that was really representative of her and where she came from and women she related to was so exciting. So I had asked if we could kind of collaborate on something together. So we had kind of gone out and taken all these photographs together, and she had gotten us a great opportunity to have those photos be taken over in New York on like bus stands and bus stations. And it was all about, this was like early on, like, what year was it?
2017?
Yeah, like 2017. Before, like, I feel like now diversity is such a huge kind of common word and such a push. But at that time, it really wasn't, we weren't there yet. And so
that was only 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know. We've come so far in such a short amount of time. But at the time, there wasn't that much opportunity. And so it was all about like, oh, Muslim women taking up space. Like that was really it. That was just like, let's just take up space. Let's just like make ourselves extra visible, extra seen. And Lamisa was working for Amalia, which was like a Muslim kind of blogger space at the time. And she had seen the campaign and reached out to us and said like, oh my gosh, I love what you guys are doing. Do you want to work on something together?
That's incredible. And it turned into something greater than just that project. Yeah. And now it's a collective and a creative agency. And you've worked with some great clients, Crocs, Nike, Daily Paper, Disney, the NHS. You've been featured in publications like DAZED and British Vogue and Mary Claire Arabia. That's incredible.
Yeah,
that visibility.
For sure. And it was all like not intentional. I think that's really what's so different to what you see now, because I think now everyone starts an Instagram with the kind of thought or intention of like, oh, I want to go viral, or I want to get verified, or I want to build a following. And that really was never our intention. We started this, we just took photos just because we wanted to take photos. And that was how we started. We defined ourselves as a photography collective, but we didn't even know what that meant. We were just going around and inviting Muslim women to come together and create a sense of community and photograph them in a way that was authentic and different to anything we had ever seen. So previous to this, when you look up the idea of a Muslim woman, you got kind of one look, a very kind of monolith look, or, it wasn't really represented. The fashion, the style, everything wasn't very representative of what it meant for us as like women growing up in inner city London. What does it mean to navigate that space as a Muslim, and what spaces and what look really relates to us? So that was kind of the goal. It was like, oh yeah, let's do a street style. Let's just invite Muslim women together and take photos of them in street clothes and kind of build a portfolio. And we did that. And then Zainab had shared it into a group chat, and they had all said, oh my gosh, you have to post this on Instagram. So we were like, okay. And then we thought, oh yeah, let's make an Instagram. What should we call it? And, it was just a bunch of Muslim women. And we said, okay, let's call it Muslim Sisterhood. And we built like 1,000 followers, overnight, pretty much.
You have a huge following now.
Well, now, yeah, we've just hit 15,000 and kind of still growing, which is amazing. But yeah, when we started, it was just not our intention to do that. And then, slowly women started reaching out, saying, I would love to get photographed. And even girls who were like never really shouted about them identifying as Muslim or being a practicing Muslim suddenly wanted to be associated with our platform. So it was a great thing that it was suddenly quote unquote cool to be Muslim, which like up until that point, I'd always felt so like, because university made me feel so embarrassed about my faith. It was like, oh, you don't shout about it. You don't really talk about it because it's like this uncool thing to be. And so suddenly it was like, oh, now people are proud actually to identify as Muslim and proud to be practicing and want to build up a community that up until then, like there wasn't really such a thing.
Yeah, and all of this is so beautiful and very connected actually to a podcast that I was listening to this morning. There's a great podcast called Talk Easy, and the host is Sam Fragoso, and he's just a wonderful interviewer. But he was interviewing Tyler Mitchell, who was the first Black photographer to be on the cover of Vogue. He shot the Beyonce cover. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And he had put out a book of his photography. And the way he described it was, he was photographing his people in joy and in light.
Exactly.
And not in pain, just as they are,
100%.
as they live.
Exactly. And I think that's such a key to our ethos of what we try and do. We're trying to cultivate Muslim joy, because so often you associate Muslim with so much pain and such negative press, and it's like it wasn't what we related to in our experience, and we were like, we just want to create a joyful space for Muslim, and specifically Muslim women as well, because it was that at that intersection of like, we want to make sure that our women have spaces where they can be authentic and be themselves and be considered, because up until that point we had just felt so unconsidered in a lot of spaces. And so we wanted to say, we want to make a space that they can be prioritized and have opportunities and do things that they otherwise would not be able to find elsewhere.
And to share that you have agency.
Yeah, for 100%.
It's really beautiful. It's great. And people, please do check out the work, because it is vibrant. It really is.
Thank you.
And I'd love to go to 2019 now. Let's fast forward a little bit. You relocate to Vancouver from London to be with your husband.
Yes.
And you experience something that many newcomers do. There's coldness, not welcoming, opportunities are not great. It's a culture shock. And tell me how you tried to navigate that, coming from such a vibrant,
oh my gosh, yeah, it was really difficult
set of years.
It was so difficult on so many different levels as well, because as I mentioned, I had struggled with like my being open about my faith in the beginning of university. And then I found Muslim Sisterhood, and we had finally built something which was so all about being proud of like who we are, and really reaching a point where we were so authentically identifying as Muslim. It was the first time in my life where I really had built like a Muslim female community, and I felt so proud of who I was and what I had built. And then I obviously made the decision to relocate here. But with the community being so much smaller than I was used to, and this city being so different to, as diverse as London is. So it felt like going kind of back to that square one of like, oh my God, nobody knows what Ramadan is here. Nobody knows, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was back into feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't fit in, and people don't really get it here. So I think that was like the first thing that was such a culture shock. And then also the general anxieties about moving country, not having the agency that I used to have, not knowing where the best places to shop are, not knowing, like having to navigate a whole different culture is so different. And then, and also it was just before COVID as well. So I just, then COVID hits, although selfishly, COVID really helped with my London FOMO though, because I felt like no one could go out. Everyone was on Zoom. So I was like, this actually works out perfectly for me.
I'm in nature.
Yeah, I know. And then also just like, none of my friends in London are going out. So I'm like, I'm not missing out on anything. And
that's true.
Yeah. And then everyone has to be on Zoom. I was like, I can be on Zoom too, guys. So it actually kind of, to some extent, helped in that regard. But yeah, I mean, it was just really, really difficult. Also because, Muslim Sisterhood was in a point of growth, and it was, I was starting to get work and opportunities. So to come here and not have work straight away and really struggle to find a job and find a space where I could still be doing something creative and be happy just felt really impossible at that time. Like I was applying for so many things and I wasn't hearing back, and I was just getting really bogged down of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it's really funny how things work out.
Oh, always.
Yeah.
Always. You've got to trust that it's
honestly,
it's going to shake out in the end somehow.
Honestly, I can tell you like how I fell into my work at Howard495, because it is all quite eerie. But so I had been applying for things for so long, and I just felt so isolated because obviously I had my husband, but I just felt so isolated because I didn't have any friends. And I had just come from a place where I just talked about my friends had been so crucial to my survival in London. So it's like to be here was just such a different space. And then I had seen that my university had an alumni group that would meet in Vancouver of kind of people who had studied at the university and who were here, and they had an alumni event. And I remember so vividly driving there and just telling Zayn, my husband, I was like, oh, I don't want to go. Like, I don't even want to go. Like, no one's going to, like, I'm just going to be the odd one out. And it was in a bar, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to be that odd one out. No one's going to like talk to me. I'm so awkward. Like, I just almost didn't go. And no, he forced me, as he always does. He forced me for the better. And then I went and I met a woman called Kim, who was at the time the director of Capture Photo Festival.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kim Spencer-Nairn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we had done like kind of little talks about our experiences in work. And she was just so open and so lovely. And we had spoken for a while, and she said, you should meet me for coffee and like, let's talk more. And I'd love to know more about what you're doing. And it was the first time, you know, I'm the kind of personality where if someone doesn't take that first step towards me, it's really bad. But if someone does take the first step towards me, I really struggle to make a first step towards someone else. And so I just felt like she was really open. So then I felt comfortable enough to return that. And so I met up with her, and she took me around kind of the Capture offices, and we went down and we sat for coffee, and I just really just kind of let it all out, and I expressed to her this kind of struggle I was having, the experiences that I had, and how I really felt like I was building something in the UK. And that experience didn't translate in Vancouver. No one knew about Muslim Sisterhood. No one really cared about the kind of stuff I was doing over there. The culture was different. So that I just felt like I had so much to offer, but I just didn't know where to put it. And she had mentioned that, oh, you know, I know of this advisor called Krista Howard, who's been looking for an assistant. You know, I can recommend you to her, or maybe you could reach out to her. I can give you her email. And I was like, yeah, okay, like that would be great. And I left the coffee shop and I Googled Howard495, and I saw the gallery and I saw the website, and I saw the kind of names, and I recognized the artists, and it was a very kind of international looking sort of program. And I had, you know, I was so active in the arts community in London that coming here, I'd visited a few galleries, and I didn't recognize a lot of the artists. The type of work was very different to what I was used to. So to go on Howard495's website and see work and artists that I know and I was familiar with and that I loved.
Exciting.
It was exciting. It was like, oh my God, okay, like this is the kind of place that I would love to be surrounded by. And I just like jumped on a bus and I went straight there. Like I just left the coffee shop and I was like, I'm like not letting this opportunity go. I need to go there and check it out. And I went and I rang the doorbell, and like typical Krista fashion, she has a ring doorbell and she's not there. And she's like, I'm in the car. I'm on my way.
That's Krista.
Yeah, honestly, that's Krista. That's like, now that I know her, like, oh, bless her. That's so like that experience. And so, so I just sat down. I like sat on the steps outside on East Hastings, and on Railway Street. And I'm just sitting on the step, not realizing that kind of area is not the type of area you just sit on the steps. And so I was just sitting there, and I just waited like 20 minutes for her to arrive. And then she pulled up. And she was just like, oh, hi. And I was like, hi, like, I want to work for you. Like,
I'm your assistant.
Yeah, I would love to work for you. And I would love to talk to you. And she was very open. And she was like, yeah, like, let's go upstairs. And I had my laptop with me. And she just let me talk. And I was just feeling really nervous because I was like, is this an interview or is this not an interview? I don't really know. But I was just like, I'm just going to tell her my whole life story. So I just went, I opened my laptop, and I showed her all the artwork I had done and what I was doing. And you know, we were just kind of talking, and she was telling me about people she knew, and I was just getting really excited. And it was just kind of we kind of naturally just clicked, I think, in that moment. And so she was like, yeah, sure. Like, you can start with me for 2 days a week. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take it. Like, no matter what, I'll take anything. And so I started off just kind of working for her 2 days a week, kind of going into the gallery. And yeah, I was just kind of manning the desk. Like, that was really my only job at the time. It was just kind of man the desk and see people as they walk in. And I think kind of as I grew with her, you know, I think she also appreciated that I wasn't just there to just man the desk. Like, I really wanted to where I always had suggestions and I always had advice, and I appreciated that she was always open to listen as well. Like she always asked me like, oh, what do you think? And like, oh, like, what do you think about this? Or listen to my suggestion and say like, oh, that's a great idea. And it was really nice to have someone who I could have a dialogue with. And it wasn't so much of a hierarchy, but even though she was my boss, she was still very open to hearing what I had to say. And I think she appreciated that I was very tuned in, that I actually had an opinion to give.
Yeah, I was going to use the word openness. That there was an openness there, kind of, like that openness that you had with your mom too.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now you're associate director.
Yes.
Which is great.
I know.
Yeah, that's really, really, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
That you're able to land there.
I know.
And find a place for yourself. And for people who don't know Howard495, it's an art advisory firm, and you work with new clients, you work with dedicated collectors, both in the private and the commercial spaces.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's so different to what anything I didn't even know what an art advisor was when I started, to be honest. I really didn't understand what our job was. But now, like years later, I so appreciate it, and I so know the importance of what we do. And it really is just like a flip. And I think that's another reason why I was able to add like a little bit of a different experience, is because I had come from the other side. I'd come from the artist background. I had, built relationships with kind of artists who are now entering the market, I had moved around kind of the young artist space. And so I could offer kind of Howard495 a perspective of ways to innovate in terms of our shows and things we could do different, but also just understand what artists are coming up and how they navigate the art market on that side. So yeah, to be on the other side of it is really interesting.
You know what I really loved about you guys too when I first met you? The openness also extends to the people who you work with, because you also said to me, it really doesn't matter what your budget is.
Yeah.
We'll help you start to build a collection.
For sure.
And I feel like that is such a relief for people who love art but don't know where to start, is to have someone who says, don't worry, it's okay if you don't have $20,000.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
This is about art.
That's a misconception as well, I feel. Sometimes we also feel that certain spaces are not for us, or there's like a certain privilege that comes with types of things. Like when you think art collector, you think affluent, you think this is not somewhere that I can associate myself with, but actually it is very, affordable, and it is very attainable for people to build collections. And that's something that I learned throughout this process. And there actually are ways that kind of an everyday person can get in and learn something from it. And sometimes we just need to kind of accept that we can enter these spaces and really push ourselves to find a way in. It's tough though. It's really tough if you don't know someone. And that's kind of why advisors come in as well, because people who are wanting to access certain things or learn certain things about the art market, galleries sometimes are a bit private about the information that they have, or there isn't always a comfortable entry point, but an art advisor is kind of that good kind of middle ground person, because we work for the client, and we go out and we deal with kind of the spaces that are hard to access, and then we come and we help you.
If someone wants to build a meaningful collection for themselves, is it important to build around a theme?
I wouldn't say. I mean, Krista might have her own opinion. She's been in the industry a lot longer than I am. But in kind of the little experience I have, I don't think it's necessary to build around a specific theme per se. I've been really interested in seeing people with quite diverse collections. I think it's always quite nice. I think for me, it's when I look at work, I see work in dialogue with one another. So I see what one work says to another and how it changes how you view pieces. That's why I'm really interested in hanging something really different against something completely opposite to it, and seeing how they kind of communicate. Which I'm not sure if that's all how people always view art, but that's just always how I've seen it. I've always been interested in curation, which is why I think building collections is kind of that natural thing I'm attracted to, because there's a very similar motive to it. You're trying to put together things in a way that maybe there isn't one, maybe they aren't the same medium, or maybe they aren't from the same time frame, but there is some sort of thread that kind of carries through them all.
Or maybe a point of friction that, sparks a dialogue.
100%. Yeah, for sure. I think that's the best thing about art as well, that it doesn't give you all the answers straight away. But there is some movement for interpretation and for conversation. And I think that's the best kind of art, that leaves some space for that.
I remember in a previous conversation that I had with you and Krista, we were talking about the nature of Vancouver and sort of the insularness that happens here in relation to the greater art world. How can the city break out of that? Will we ever get there?
I'd like to think so. I for sure think there just needs to be an open-mindedness, firstly. I think Vancouver has amazing qualities, and it's very proud of those qualities, and it doesn't want to lose those intrinsic qualities, which I totally understand, as it should. Like, I don't think this city should try and be like another city. I think it's just about opening up beyond kind of that insularness, as you described, and just trying to realize that you can pull things in. If we're talking about a collection, you can pull things internationally into a typical kind of Canadian artist-based collection, and you can still have a meaningful dialogue, and maybe it might add more value or even a richness to what you already have. So, and I think that's the case. Like, I think there's like when I think of art collectives and opportunities that I had in London, there is just a huge sense of community and opportunity over there. And I feel like Vancouver has so much potential to offer that. It just needs to figure out how to like self-organize and work together. I think that's something that I miss about London. There is a lot of support for the arts as well. There is a huge, like, we obviously have an arts council, which I know there is something similar here, and I don't want to kind of make blanket phrases because I haven't been here long enough to really understand. But I think that's the first thing. Like, as an artist, I really struggled to know what opportunities are available. I feel like it's not very accessible to find all the right information. Even if it is there, I wouldn't know where to look to get it. And I think that's the first step. Like, we need to be really open about the information that's out there and make it accessible for people, and then we allow people to actually flourish to the like height of their potential,
so they don't have to leave.
Exactly, so they don't have to leave, because then the more opportunity there is, and the more we're kind of thinking of ways we can fund the arts in a more sustainable way, and allow artists to have, like, maintain their practice. I think that's really difficult. That's difficult anyway. It's difficult in the UK, but I imagine it's even harder in Vancouver as an artist. How do you afford to maintain your practice? And then, if you're trying to do shows, I have seen things like August Studios and groups banding together to support young artists. I know it's out there, but I think how also do you help those artists reach that next step as well? To make not only maintain an artist career, but also have a like sustainable artist career that you can keep practicing.
Exactly. Yeah. That sort of harkens back again. I'm referring back to this Talk Easy pod, but Antoine Sargent was on there, and he was talking about Black artists and giving them the ability to have a sustainable practice.
I'm like, okay, someone's posting all the exhibitions that are on, and like, okay, now I can actually, see what's on, but like he's one guy running that platform, and we kind of need to see more stuff like that. Yeah.
I want to go back to
me emulating where I was, like, in Kingston, like that was me there. Yeah. So
it's also labor,
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Explaining yourself is like huge emotional labor, for sure. Out there, you have to be okay with, like saying, you have to be okay with going up to someone and talking, introducing yourself. It's like things I really struggle with, but I've had to face because I moved here.
Well, I really hope that you guys continue to have your long table dinners at Howard, because that was really fun.
Yeah, I know.
That was really fun.
Same as she says, he's like, it's the best night of my life.
Honestly, I felt the same way. I'm like, this is the best night that I've had in a really long time.
Yeah.
And I feel that I enjoyed it because there was an energy in there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a diversity of people who were
For
there.
sure.
And it just felt like an energy that I hadn't felt in the city in a really long time. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope you guys could continue to cultivate that.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. I really want us to be able to do more of those. I think it also creates a sense of community a little bit more. It's funny because with Muslim Sisterhood in the UK, this is a very common thing that we do. Hosting kind of like monthly or like every few months brunches and dinners is something that we really do. And because it makes such a difference for the community, it creates a sense of community when you bring people together and you have that shared environment over food, over a meal,
Over a laugh.
over a laugh. Like people just connect and you get to know people and you leave as better friends like than you did when you start. You sit with a bunch of strangers and then suddenly you're all best friends by the end of it.
Yeah.
And that's like a beautiful thing that we really try and push because it's about creating joyful spaces. And that's something I push within my work over there all the time. So it was really nice to have the opportunity during Andrew's show to be able to do that over here. And as you said, it was just like, it was a group of people who had never met before or just recently became friends or recently met each other. And to all sit in this space and just to have a really good time. I think it was important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Really important. Really important. Well, just a couple more questions for you. Have you seen Black Panther?
Yes.
Okay. You know the scene where, they take the herb and then they go to the ancestral plane?
Yes.
So if I gave you some herb right now and you went to the ancestral plane,
Yeah.
what do you think your ancestors would tell you?
Oh my God. Wow. I don't know. You know what's so funny? Because I love that scene.
I love that scene.
I love that scene because I really do feel that scene. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Also because I think my whole life, my mom always used to talk about the past and talk about her relationship to her family. Like she would always talk about her family, especially family that were no longer with us, and how much she had love for them. And even though I never met these people, through her storytelling, I had such a love for those people as well, even though I didn't even know them. Like I didn't know my grandfather, but my mom used to talk about him with such a reverence that I had so much respect for a man that I never even met. And so I feel like, yeah, so I don't know what they would necessarily say to me, but I really do have a lot of respect for specifically my mom's like heritage and her family and where she's come from. And like I'm very much like her. She was always into like scrapbooking old family pictures and like collating old memories. She was very attached to the past. But I have inherited a part of that nostalgia. Like I love looking at old photos and I love looking at old videos. I love seeing my relatives when they were younger because like it's so interesting to me, but it's also like I feel that joy that they felt like makes me happy as well. Like I feed on that joy as well. Like it's so nice for me to see what like rich lives they lived. So yeah, I don't know what they would say to me, but I like to think I'd be really happy to see them and I think they'd be happy to see me.
My final question. And this is what I ask every guest, with what you do, what is it that you want to leave behind in the world?
What I do, what do I want to leave behind? I don't know. I'd like to think I leave behind some sort of like inspiration in the sense of like feeling like things can always work out, and even when things aren't going the way that you've seen, that like when one door closes another one opens. I would like someone to look at like my kind of tumultuous journey of like even ending up here and feeling like nothing's gonna come my way, showing that even in those moments something still, you don't know where life is gonna take you. And I feel like I felt that way earlier because of the type of loss that I faced in my life. So I felt like I had that experience so much younger than a lot of my peers. A lot of my peers very, very comfortable, and good for them. Like they have both their parents. They have a stable nuclear family home. Like they have so much, and they're just entering the workforce, and they're just starting to face these questions of like, oh my God, where is life going to take me, or what's going to happen? You know, as adulthood does, it brings in a lot of uncertainty. And I feel like I've already faced a lot of uncertainty in my life from a young age. So I would like to think that if someone was to look at my life, they would say that, okay, with that uncertainty, there is still so much possibility that can come your way.
I love that. Beautiful.
Thanks.
If people wanted to connect with you, Muslim Sisterhood, where can they go?
If they want to connect with me, you can DM me on Instagram. Sara Gulamali. That's SaraGulamali. Yeah, you can DM me.
And as for you, I don't know if you noticed, but you use the word joy so much in this conversation. So I hope that you continue to feel that and that you continue to create joyful spaces for others.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm so appreciative that I met you.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. As always, thank you for being here and for listening. To learn more about today's guest, visit the episode page for show notes and links on wearethecraft.com. You can find the entire podcast archive here or explore more conversations with past guests on Spotify and Apple. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on these platforms, including YouTube, to get notified when new episodes drop. Any likes and shares on social media are deeply appreciated too. Sound and audio engineering for this show are by Andrew and Jaba Gaspis. All guest portraits and images are by Juno Kim. Appreciate you all and see you again soon.